I think Marco Rubio had a very, very bad night. And personally, I'd call for him to drop out of the race. I think it's time now that he drop out of the race. I really think so. I would love to take on Ted one-on-one. That would be so much fun. Because Ted can't win New York. He can't win New Jersey. He can't win Pennsylvania. He can't win California. I want Ted one-on-one.
Well, the battle for the GOP nomination keeps heating up as Trump has called for Rubio to drop out, setting his sights on Senator Ted Cruz. Of course, Cruz showing a lot of life recently with those wins in Kansas and Maine over the weekend. But can he earn enough delegates to actually win the nomination right out? Looks like no one can right now. Joining me, Jillian Melcher and Ford O'Connell. Let me start with you, Jillian. The notion of a broker convention, the narrative right now is that if there is a broker convention, it's an attempt to steal the nomination from Donald Trump.
Yeah, that's definitely been the narrative. And there's been all of this talk about how there's going to be a revolt if that happens. But if you look at it, 28% of Republicans have said no matter what, they're not voting for Trump. A lot of them would kind of hold their breath but don't like it. So I think that if, it comes down to it and they hand it over to Trump, we might be dealing with a revolt too. There are a lot of conservatives who are saying if Trump gets this nomination, the Republican Party doesn't represent me. This is not my party.
On the other hand, though, Ford, Donald Trump has received a whole lot more votes so far than any other GOP running in the previous last few races. I mean, you got to really go back to Ronald Reagan to find this sort of enthusiasm, particularly for a general election. So, again, would this be stealing from Donald Trump, even if he does average only 35–40% going into the convention?
Well, Chairman Priebus may be downplaying the proposition of a brokered convention, but it's a 50-50 possibility. And let me say this. I actually think that if you have a brokered convention, it's going to be like flying an airplane into a volcano. Whoever loses out on this situation is going to take their ball and go home, and Hillary Clinton's going to walk back into the White House at the front door. The best situation out there is for one of these guys to get 1,237 delegates, so we have to stop talking about it. Yes, this occurred in 1976 between Ford and Reagan, and they played it out and everything was fine, but still some people went home, and frankly, in this era of social media and in cable TV, nobody actually knows what the rules are. No one knows what Rule 40 is. Everyone's going to come away wounded if their guy doesn't win.
Well, and here's the thing, not just in 76, but 1944. That was the real famous one with the Republican. You had Dewey, Robert Taft, Douglas MacArthur. It was ugly. And then Dewey, of course, went on to one of the biggest upsets in history. So yeah. The bottom line, if there is a broker convention, it's hard to believe whoever comes out of that, even if it is a Donald Trump winning the general election.
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't it be a form of suicide by the party?
I think it's going to be really scrappy. It's interesting to look at. There are more voters who would vote against both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton than would vote for them at this point. But
what do you mean, according to polls?
Yeah, Rasmussen.
But they're both killing it, though.
They're both really unlikable candidates.
But they're both overwhelmingly are winning right now in their respective parties.
But I think what's so interesting too, though, is if you look at the Trump situation, the Republicans are trying to figure out how do we get this guy out. It's a question of, do we divide and conquer? Do we want to just deprive him of the delegates? Or do we want to prop up Cruz? And that is really narrowing.
Ford, who's got the biggest argument? The 35–40% Trump or the 60% non-Trump going into a broker convention?
I would say the 35–40% Trump, and obviously the other side has got to still figure out which one of the mantle holders it will be. Let's understand something else. And unless we have a war or major recession, 43 states are decided. This whole election is going to come down to 250,000 votes out of 120 million cast in 4 states, Florida, Ohio, Colorado, and Virginia. So let's also remember this. I don't look at national polls until we know who the 2 nominees are, but I'm going to tell you that's how narrow the electoral map is. And the fact that Donald Trump is able to do pretty well with African-American voters and with white-collar voters tells me that he has a little bit better chance, even if you don't like his policy. I'm all about winning. Let everyone else hash that out.
I can tell you right now, listening to Steve Harvey on my way in today, I'm not sure he's going to be doing as well with African Americans by the time the election comes around. Thanks a lot.